Hi everybody. So in a previous video, I talked about Monica Gellar and how I relate to her character. So in today's video, I'm doing a bit of a different format for my character analysis. I am doing a good, bad, ugly, and talking about Monica's older brother Ross, who is played by David Schwhimmer. David Schwhimmer, let me just say, he's a fantastic actor. And he also directed 10 episodes of Friends, including one of my favorites called The One with the Birth Mother, which has the most powerful monologue by Matthew Perry in it that gets me crying every single time. He was also good in the TV show that came out a couple of years back called The People vs. O.J. Simpson, which we watched last year. So, let's begin. In this video, I am going to be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly moments of Ross Gellar. Let's begin. The good. The good episodes about Ross are the episodes where he's funny, or where he shows that he cares about his friends. The first episode I want to mention is Pivot. This is the episode, the one with the cop, where Ross, Rachel, and Chandler are moving his couch up the stairs in his new apartment building. This scene is really funny. And I always see this thing pop up, this post popped up on Instagram, which is an advertisement for Ashley Furniture, where they use Pivot on a picture of moving your furniture, which I think is a genius way for a moving company to, or a furniture company to advertise moving furniture. The next book is Teaching Ben About His Jewish Heritage. This episode is in season 6, and it is the one with the holiday armadillo. In this episode, Ross cannot find any Santa Claus costumes at the costume shop, so he instead gets the only costume that they have left, which is an armadillo costume. And he is so funny and caring in this moment, showing how much he cares about wanting to teach his young son, who I believe is supposed to be 5 in this episode, about his Jewish heritage. A few minutes after Ross starts to tell the Hanukkah story, Chandler comes into the apartment dressed as Santa. He borrows the Santa Claus costume from somebody at his work. And I feel sort of bad for Ross when Chandler comes in, because he's trying to do something nice for his son, and Chandler kind of spoils it. But, I mean, he also wants his nephew to have a good Christmas, too, so that makes perfect sense. And then Joey comes in next dressed up as Superman, which I did not think was really necessary. I think the directors could have done without that part, because it had nothing to do with the holidays, really. The next episode is the one with all of the candy. I talked about this episode a lot in my video where I talked about how I related to Monica, because in Monica's plotline, she's trying to make candy to please all her new neighbors in the apartment building. In Ross's storyline, he is really moved by the fact that Phoebe never learned how to ride a bike, so he buys a bike for her and teaches her to ride it. Of course, this doesn't go well, and Phoebe and Ross kind of get into a fight because Phoebe didn't really like the fact that she let go of him when she wasn't ready for him to let go. And before Ross goes into the bedroom to talk to Phoebe, he basically says, if you don't see me at your wedding, now you know why. This is the Christmas episode that takes place right in the season, right before Chandler and Monica get married. This is my favorite episode. So this is in season 9. It's the one where Ross is teaching, is trying to make Emma laugh, and he makes Emma laugh by rapping and singing Baby Got Back by Sir Mix-a-Lot. And there's this nice scene at the end where Rachel and Ross are rapping together to Baby Got Back. It's so much fun. I love that scene between Jennifer Aniston and David Schwhimmer. The last episode I wanted to mention in this category is the one with the lesbian wedding. So, in this episode, as you know, because I've talked about it several times before, this is the episode where Carol and Susan are getting married, and Carol comes into Monica and Rachel's apartment really upset, and she has a heart-to-heart with Ross, explaining that her parents are not going to come to the wedding because they do not approve of her marriage to Susan. So, Ross offers to take her father's place to walk her down the aisle, and that's very, very sweet and kind of him to do. What I never really understood is why Susan and Ross didn't like each other. I think it was probably because Ross was mad at Susan because of the cheating situation with her and Carol. But I feel like there was something else between them that made them not like each other. And I never really understood that. Maybe there's nothing else that caused them not to like each other besides the fact that Susan was the other woman. I don't know. Next is the bad. The next situation I wanted to mention about Ross is in season 2, episode 4, the one with the cat. This is the one where a lost cat wanders into Central Park, and Phoebe picks it up and takes it home with her, thinking that it is her mother reincarnated as a cat. Monica, Chandler, Joey, and Rachel want to really be supportive of their friend, but Ross does not see things that way, and he tells it like it is, and he's blunt and very rude to Phoebe that this is a cat who a little girl is missing and wants back, because they see missing cat posters up all around town that this little girl is missing for the cat whose name is Julio. And I just think Phoebe is spot on when she says to Ross, you have never lost any parents, have you? And obviously Phoebe is using this situation as a way to cope with as a coping mechanism for losing her mother, which is sad. Phoebe's story is really interesting because there's so many layers. Her dad walked out on the family and reappears in the episode, the one with Joey's bag, where they have the funeral for Phoebe's grandma. I just saw that episode the other day, and I really felt bad for Phoebe because you can tell how much she resents her father for leaving her and Ursula behind. cheating on Rachel with Chloe. So yeah, Rachel and Ross did break up. I don't think Ross handled his breakup very well by sleeping with another woman. He was very vulnerable, so of course he said yes to going home with Chloe, but he should have not done that. He said he should have called Joey or Chandler for a ride home instead of going to sleep with another woman. He basically sleeps with another woman because he's mad at Rachel because Mark comes over to visit. That's another thing. Here's another episode that really bugs me about Ross. The one with all the jealousy, season 3, episode 12. In this episode, Rachel gets her new job at Bloomingdale's, and Ross is insanely jealous of her coworker Mark, and he sends her all of these gifts and gets a barbershop quartet to come to the office to sing to her. He goes way over the top, and rightfully so. Rachel gets upset with him and freaks out with him because she feels he's being too possessive. And I feel bad for him a little bit because he doesn't want Rachel to leave him because Carol cheated on him with Susan. I just find Ross to be a really immature and insecure character throughout the whole series. Rachel isn't much better with her jealousy either, because she's jealous of Julie and she's jealous of Emily, and she shows up at Ross and Emily's wedding at the last minute after deciding she wasn't going to go, but then she decides to go at the last minute, and that's why Ross says her name at the altar instead of Emily's, and rightfully so. I don't blame Emily for getting mad at him about that, but I think she went overboard by telling Ross he could not be friends with Rachel anymore because of saying the name at the altar. That was a little bit ridiculous, and that's what made me not like her. In James Burrows' memoir, he mentions that David Schwhimmer and Helen Baxendale did not really get along, so I guess the whole unraveling of the relationship with Emily and Ross doesn't make a lot of sense. Oh, but here's another thing that really bothers me about Ross. Do you remember how I said that he didn't really like Susan? So, in the one with Rachel's new dress, which is an episode I just watched another night a couple of nights ago. I've mentioned this in previous videos because the other plot line for this episode is Rachel going on a date with Joshua. They have dinner at the apartment. They end up going to Joshua's house instead of the apartment because he is allergic to Chandler and Joey's chicken duck. So this is the episode that Matthew Perry's dad guest stars in. But back to Ross and his plot. So, obviously, in this episode, Carol and Susan come by to Ross's apartment while Emily is visiting to drop off Ben because it is Ross's weekend to have custody. Carol and Susan meet Emily. Emily and Susan hit it off because they really like theater. Susan is going to be in London the following week for something for her job, and they say, yeah, let's get together. Ross gets jealous because Susan and Emily are really getting along and hanging out nicely. And when Carol comes to pick up Ben, once the weekend of custody is over, Ross rightfully has an anxiety attack because he thinks that Susan is going to cheat on Carol with Emily, and Carol is like, you are being so paranoid. And I agree with her, Jane Sibbett. In that scene where you tell Ross he is being paranoid, I agree with you 100%. I understand Ross getting jealous of Rachel in her relationships with other men, but I just think it's so unnecessary that he cares so much about another person's relationship being impacted by another person being friends with them. Like, I get it. I can sort of understand Ross's insecurity because he is mad at Susan still for cheating on him. He is mad at Susan still and has resentment towards her still for cheating on him with Carol. But does he really need to drag Emily into his anxiety issues and his jealousy when Susan's friendship with Emily has nothing to do with him at all? That plot line of that episode really bothers me a lot. Okay, the ugly. These are the Ross plot lines that I feel the directors of Friends could have done without. I talked about one of them in my episode for Mother's Day, the one with the metaphorical tunnel, where Ross freaks out about Ben playing with the Barbie doll. Like, he's pathetic in that episode. Even Monica and Rachel pointed out that he's pathetic. Carol feels the same way. And another episode where Ross shows that he's homophobic is season 10, where him and Rachel are hiring a nanny for Emma, and they interview a guy who is very well qualified, and he jumps to a conclusion that he might be gay. They don't even know if he's gay or not. The nanny, Sandy, he was played by Freddie Prinze Jr., who was fantastic in that role. He did a really good job playing Sandy, the male nanny, but that really bothered me. And I've also talked about this in several different videos, but one of my least favorite Ross plot lines that they could have done without is Ross dating his student, Elizabeth. It is pointed out in one of the episodes in this 3-episode arc for this storyline that there is a 12-year age gap between Elizabeth and Ross. Elizabeth is 20 and Ross is like in his early 30s by this point in the series, which is like season 6. Yeah, this is the episode arc where Bruce Willis guest stars as Elizabeth's father, Paul Stevens. And rightfully so. He does not think it's appropriate that Ross is dating Elizabeth. He should have gotten Ross fired from his job at the university. I don't think Ross really gives a shit about his job at the university, and I don't understand how he was able to get tenure in later episodes because of this situation with Elizabeth. He should have gotten fired for dating his student because he was breaking a law that is clearly listed in the staff handbook. He didn't care about it, though, because all he cared about was having sex with his 20-year-old student. Now, I have talked in previous videos about this episode when I talk about age gap in relationships. The other two relationships I have mentioned in that video were Richard and Monica and Frank Jr. and Alice. But I'm not going to talk about those episodes tonight. The final episode I wanted to talk about before I get into the most recent episode I saw with a plot line about Ross that really bothered me and deemed really unnecessary, that should have been axed by the writers, is the one with Ross and Monica's cousin. This episode happens in season 7 before Monica and Chandler's wedding. Monica is having her bachelorette party, and her cousin, Monica and Ross's cousin, who is played by Denise Richards, who at this time was a really popular supermodel. She plays their cousin. And of course, she's a gorgeous supermodel, so, like, she gets thrown out of staying at Chandler and Monica's apartment because Monica catches Chandler inappropriately staring at her, so she goes to stay with Ross. Not only does Ross inappropriately stare at her, but he tries to make a move on her and flirt with her, which is really gross because they are supposed to be cousins. I don't know what their age gap is, because I don't know what the age gap is literally between David Schwhimmer and Denise Richards, but Ross's inner monologue about wanting to have sex with his cousin is so gross and so disturbing, I can't even stand it. So the final episode I wanted to talk about tonight is an episode I most recently watched. I watched it about 2 weeks ago. This is in season 9, after Emma is born in season 9, episode 2, where Rachel and Ross are trying to find a pediatrician for their new baby daughter, Emma. And Monica recommends their childhood pediatrician and gag me with a spoon for this, but Ross is supposed to be in his 30s, and he is still seeing his childhood pediatrician, which is the weirdest thing ever. I do not understand where the writers of Friends came up with a plotline like this. This is a top episode that they could have done without the plotline of. It's stupid and it makes no sense. I feel the same way about the run with Ross and Monica's cousin. An episode not related to Ross at all that I think they should have done without is the one with the sharks. This takes place during a timeline where Chandler is in Tulsa for his job and Monica goes to visit him, and she walks in on him masturbating to watching a shark documentary, which he has to frantically switch the channel to watch because he was watching porn and didn't want to get caught watching porn. Like, why is that plot line even necessary? I don't really think it does much for the plot line of Monica and Chandler's relationship at all. So thank you for tuning into this video. Have a great night.